Okay, today this is going to be the rear brake replacement on a 2012 Ford Explorer. I have my $55 rear brake kit from eBay with brake pads and rotors. So first we'll start by taking off the wheel, which I've already loosened up all of the lug nuts. So I'll just go ahead and remove them. So I already positioned the floor jack underneath the rear of the car. I'm lifting from the suspension, the most solid part of the car. It's right underneath the rear suspension. Nothing on the body, close to the exhaust. We're just going to lift it up off the ground. The tire is clear. So I'll remove the last lug nut. And the rear wheel. I'll spray a little rust penetrating for rusty bolts. A little bit on everything we're going to remove just to make it easier to get these brake calipers off. This is a 13 millimeter. So I got the bolts removed that hold the caliper in. We're just going to pry this caliper out of here. Put it in the back there so it's not going to fall. We don't want to put any stress on the brake hoses at all. So the second is the bracket that holds the caliper on. We're going to remove with the 15 millimeter. There's 2 bolts. So we removed the 2 bolts. Now we're going to remove the bracket with the brake pads in it. As you can see, they're getting pretty thin. If you take a look at a new one, you can see there's quite a difference. So I'm replacing that and the brake rotor because these tend to get wore down a lot. You can feel the ridge on the top here, how far it's wore in. Plus they get grooved a lot and wore out. So as cheap as they are, you're better off just to replace both while you're in there. I'm just trying to get these pads to come out of here. This is a star screw right there that they use at the factory to hold these rotor's on there, so I'm going to find the star to remove that. So what I did is I just put a star driver on the end of my ratchet, a 1/4 inch ratchet. I got it braced with a long pry bar just to kind of hold us from spinning, and now we got the screw loose out of here. So we need to take that out. Get the rotor off. So I sprayed some penetrating oil around the hub here and the studs just to get this thing loose, and a little tapping back and forth. Should come off of there. So this we're going to discard. This we're going to clean up. Make it easier for the next time it goes on. We're going to oil this up here and probably sand it down a little bit to get rid of some of the rust and get it ready for the new one to go on. So we're just going to sand this, clean this up a little. So we're just doing this to make the new one go on a lot easier, and if you ever have to remove it again down the road, the next time you do a brake job or something, it'll make it easier for this to come off, because these do get rusty. So we took this vehicle to the Ford dealership. This was a recall on the rear suspension links. This is what they replaced yesterday or the other day. While they were in there, they said your brake pads were getting low, and obviously, you know, they were. So rather than have them replace it and charge me $300, I decided to do it myself, which I think changing brakes is pretty easy stuff to do. It's not that difficult. I mean, you put on new brake pads and a brake rotor, you got brand new brakes. So other than that, I don't think it's that difficult. So we'll just continue on here with the rest of it. So we're going to test fit the new one. Make sure that's going to be right fit. You can see the spot where the screw is going to go back in. We verified that it's the same size as the old one. And when these come, they come oiled, keep them from rusting in the factory. So what we're going to do is spray some degreaser on here or some brake clean, either one. And we're going to remove that oil from the surface. So you don't want that mixing with your new brake pads. Just worry about getting the surface where the brake pads are going to be in contact. Place this on here. Wherever your hands touch, you can go back and wipe that off one more time. And we'll go ahead and put the screw back in. Basically, that's just to hold the rotor in place. Serves no other purpose. So the brake caliper mounting bracket we're going to put back on now. We have our new brake rotor on there. Some brake kits come with these new guide plates that go in here. That's where the brake pad itself will actually be living and sitting in that position when it's on the vehicle. We're just going to go ahead and clean ours up with some sandpaper. Just clean all the crud out of there. You don't have to get too crazy, but you want to get it clean. spray a little bit of degreaser on there if you wanted. The whole time we're doing this on this cardboard here. Catch all the oils and keep it off of our garage floor. I'm sure most people like to do that, keep them clean. We're going to put a little of brake lubricant in these little guide plates. That's just to make sure that the new ones move freely. You don't want to overdo it, just put a little bit in there. And then I'll go ahead and mount this back on the vehicle. Basically, you're going to drop it down over the top of the rotor. And secure it again with the... So we're just repositioning that caliper bracket on there that holds the brake pads. We're tightening it back up with our 15mm ratchet. You want to get these snug and tight. And then we're going to go ahead and place our new brake pads back in here. Oops. Put them right into the guide plates. So we have both brake pads back into the holder. Push them up tight against the rotor. I like to put a little bit of, just a little bit on the back side of these. Right where your new caliper is going to go back on here. So what we have to do now is compress this piston in here, because it's not going to fit over the new brake pads when they're on there, because they're a lot thicker now. The other ones wore down, so this has been extended. So we're going to go ahead and put a vice clamp on this. So we're going to position this vice grip clamp on here over the piston and onto the back to a solid spot on the back of the caliper. And before we start doing any compressing of that, we're going to loosen the cap on the master cylinder, the brake fluid, because it's going to push brake fluid back into the master cylinder. So we're going to open that up right now. We're going to remove the cap on that. I'm going to throw a rag around this to catch some of the brake fluid. Is going to come back up, bubble back up through there, because we're pushing it back through the lines. It's going to come back into that. So now we can go over and start compressing our rear caliper piston. So when we start compressing this, just real slow. And you're pressing a lot of fluid back up through this, so it's going to be a little tight. As you can see, we've compressed the caliper piston back down to the bottom, far in, and making sure that the notches that are in that piston are straight up and down, because the purpose of that is for them to line up with the little tabs that stick out on the back of the brake pad. So as you can see, they're right there. That'll slide into that. And you want to make sure it's compressed far enough so that it does slide over your new brake pads, and that it's going down onto the brake pads, and you can go ahead and reinstall the two bolts that hold the caliper onto the bracket. So here you can see the brake job is complete on driver's side. Everything is back in place. We have everything tightened down. Everything is in the right position. We have everything nice and snug again and tightened. And now we're going to go ahead and just put the wheel back on, and we're going to repeat the procedure for the passenger side. Same thing. So when you retighten all the lug nuts, you want to use a star pattern, which means you're alternating. So you're not tightening in a clockwise or circle counterclockwise position. You're going back and forth across the studs. That way you're assuring that you get a good tight so what I like to do is, like I said, go back and forth across. Never tighten the one like right next to it. You get them all snugged up. And then lower the tire to the ground, make sure it's in contact so it doesn't spin. Then you can go ahead and retighten everything the same way, back and forth across star pattern to make sure that you have them completely tightened down then. So that's all we have for you. Thanks.